Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Wynonna Earp as well as the latest episode of Outcast. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Outcast. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. Quite a few things to discuss about this week's episode. First of all, there's a whole Doc and Wynonna situation, which is interesting because obviously there's a whole Doc and Contessa situation because it's oh yeah, they kind of shacked up, they kind of got back together. Waverly kind of knows about her existence, but no one else really does. But she doesn't even know that they kind of knocked boots and everything. But the entire episode is oh my god, Doc's in such a good mood. He's got such a glow about him. But then there's a whole double the innuendos between him and double entendres and him and Wynonna, this flirtiness to it. It's kind of okay. So it's because it's always obvious he's always had feelings for Wynonna, but I guess the whole doll situation made that complicated. But then at the same time they have a kid together, so obviously there's something there. There's always has been, but it makes you wonder. It's what makes it worse is Contessa hits his wife, so it's oh yeah, so that complicates it even more. Kind of puts it in the same vein as Nicole and Waverly situation initially. But it's actually interesting too because it once again came up about oh, no more secrets, which this episode kind of goes yeah, there's still secrets between everybody, so that turns into a whole thing. But nevertheless, kind of talking about something else. One thing I always this episode cemented it in my head, something I think I've constantly been confused about, and that is the whole situation with Peacemaker, because she tried to use it on a revenant they came across and she couldn't, where I was oh, is it not working? Oh, what's up with that? And it's oh, because she doesn't have any bullets. Because for whatever reason, ever since the first season, since the beginning of the series, my brain has always been oh yeah, that gun runs on supernatural bullets, that it doesn't actually need bullets, when in actuality it needs bullets. Basically the gun just enchants any bullets that got fired out of it. Yes, I know there's a whole situation in season 2's finale where they split the special bullet and kill both widows. Yeah, I get that, but it still doesn't correlate in my head. I thought it was just kind of oh yeah, that's the one time you put into special ammo. Other than that, it doesn't really need ammo. I think it's because you don't really see her ever load the gun. Maybe she has, but but then again, it's well, why would they want to show you that every time? It's kind of a boring thing. But it just, for whatever reason, in my head, my canon in the head, my head canon, I don't know why I just didn't say that from the beginning. It's the fact is the gun didn't need bullets. So it's oh yeah, the gun's not working is because she didn't realize, holy crap, I have no ammo. Because it turns out it's well, the fact of the matter is Black Badge isn't supplying them with stuff anymore. At least in the beginning, they had some stockpile from their working with Black Badge, but now that that's no longer the case, whatever they did have saved up since last season is running low, pretty much empty at this point in time. So it's okay, so there's that whole aspect of it I thought was kind of interesting. There's also an element to this episode that kind of got left open-ended, and that was the whole woods situation, because obviously there was a tree that it looks like it was a tree that ate people, because it seemed like there was a dude inside of it who was still kind of alive. The tree was bleeding. It led to the whole Robin and Jeremy situation where them kind of getting paired together because of Waverly. Well, it was kind of interesting because it's Jeremy's just kind of acting all awkward and weird about it. And it's oh, it's a date. I mean, date with a murderous tree. And then, Robin's be oh, it's not the worst date I've ever been on. Just kind of the interactions between them and stuff. The whole aspect of he's back in town because his dad's sick and he just took whatever first job he could. This whole being kind of a forest ranger or park ranger or whatever. No, forest ranger. He ended up losing a kid. It was a trip or something, and the first day there basically ended up losing a kid for a little while. I was we found him again, but yeah, there's a whole situation of him coughing up dirt a little. I guess that looked like that was dirt. Then there's a whole situation at his house, all those flowers growing out there, and the tree snatching him up. So it's what the hell is that about? Because apparently it seems like it's a living tree. Is it just one or is it multiple? Because there was the one that got in front of the Revenant at the beginning of the episode, but then there's the one that had the dude inside of it, so it looked like that was different. But at the same time, it's something Jeremy ends up talking about because the fog was there. It was kind of a hallucinogen. So it's maybe you saw that tree, because I also saw this stone pathway, not pathway, but almost staircase is what it was. That stone staircase, but it's when they took pictures of it, it wasn't there. So it's was it some hallucination with the fog? Are these trees or whatever not really trees, or they just, well, maybe one of them is, but that one in particular, maybe in the forest, wasn't actually a tree. It was actually something just, caught in the illusion or whatever, I don't know. Or maybe it's what like Jeremy's. Well, no, because it grabs Robin in the end. Well, no, going back, I keep bouncing around. It could have just been the one that Wynonna and Doc came across before, but didn't realize that they'd come across it because only when it saw it move was the Revenant. So, also turns out he's the last of the ones who stole Doll's serum. So that's interesting. Because it's kind of interesting, like on some level, because I pointed it out before where it's like they never, at least to my recollection, never explained why dolls didn't like the forest. Maybe it was like, I know it came up in season 1, but I don't remember if he ever explained why he didn't like the forest. Because it's kind of interesting because that kind of comes back in a certain shape or form because it seems like the forest might be a focal point for a lot of this stuff. Because it shows Doc Bullshar, so I don't know if that was really Bullshar, whether that just Doc's imagination. When he snaps back to it, I mean, he doesn't say anything, but that's kind of Doc. I think he was eventually going to talk to Wynonna about it first before anyone else, but Bullshar was offering him, was like, oh, serve me, and I can be the one to reverse your situation. You go into hell. I mean, to be fair, that's the exact same reason why Boba was trying to help him out last season, was because of that very reason. Because like, oh, I don't want to go back to hell, and he can one that has the power to make sure that I won't. So it's hard to say whether that was 100% in Doc's head or not. I'd assume, because obviously those woods are messing with everyone's heads. But is it just those woods specifically or what? So, but like I said, so it's kind of interesting. That kind of ties into the whole doll situation. Maybe it's because he had an encounter with something similar, and that kind of made him not like forest or the woods as well. I don't know. Because it just seems like ever since then, Doc hasn't been quite right. Which is going to be interesting if he does end up taking that deal. Because he is so, like, scared of his quote-unquote destiny that he is doomed for damnation. Because he saw it and he knows, like, no matter what happens, no matter, after all I've done, that's still going to be where I end up at the end of all of this. So he might still make that choice. I mean, he made the choice with the devil before when he made the deal with Constance. So that he would have his immortality. So... But at the same time, you're like, well, that wouldn't be the Doc we have right now. This is the Doc who's kind of already like lost so much, you know. It's kind of like lost Alice and stuff, which came up that conversation again because it came up because Wynonna was kind of, well, first of all, she saw the crib that he had made, which is kind of adorable, but just more heartbreaking. Because now Wynonna's second guessing, like maybe she sent Alice away just because it was the easiest thing for her. It's because now she's worried if she's doing the same thing as her mom, you know, that she might have some mental illness that fact of the matter is, it's like, you know, she's kind of seeing more and more similarities between her and her mom. The previous, episode 2 kind of hinted at that with like the whole delusion of her mom she was seeing. So I think, well, you know, that was more her subconscious and stuff like that. So maybe that's kind of feeding into it a little bit too, about her thought of being more and more like her mom. Which Waverly's trying to avoid going to see her mom because she's scared, but she eventually does because her mom had attacked, apparently was it like her therapist or something, written blood, like you will never get out or whatever. And then when she sees Waverly, she's like, oh, I'm gonna kill you. And the moment she was doing all that, and I was like, oh, okay, so there's something connected to Waverly. Like I thought it was like there's something inside of her that she thought like whenever she was around Waverly, it would transfer her to her, is what I was thinking. But it seems like that's not the case, because I know I'm going to be bouncing all around the episode. But at the end, we see that there's Jolene, played by the lovely and talented Zoe Palmer, dude, which is so cool. Obviously, prime examples of things best know her from both sci-fi shows is Lost Girl, where she played Lauren. God, it's been so long since I've seen Lost Girl, so I think that was her character's name. And obviously, most recently, the android from Dark Matter, which is like, oh, I was like, Zoe Palmer. That's so cool. I swear there was something else I saw her in, and I'm blanking on it. I feel like there was even something even more recent, or something, at least something other than that. Those two things in particular, I feel like I saw her in recently, but maybe that's just my imagination. But nevertheless, it seems like she's whatever it is that was following Waverly. Like this is because apparently long ago, like what originally got her arrested is because she burned down a barn. Not just burning it down. Apparently Waverly was inside. So it's like, oh, she's trying to kill Waverly, not just now and threatening to kill her now, but even back then. But you can tell it's like, no, it's got to be something more to this. She's just not making it coherent. Like she's probably just not in the right state of mind to make it coherent. But, even back then she told Nedley, like, oh yeah, like I was trying to kill a demon or something. And so... But everyone kind of chalked it up to her just being crazy. What I'm curious, though, is like, what is this thing? This might be a demon or something that's connected to the Gibson family. Maybe that's why, like, because look, think about it. Interestingly enough, who's the person it went after? It went after Waverly. Maybe this is some kind of deal, like demonic deal that was made years ago that Michelle's kind of having to pay for now, or maybe it's just a situation that it's just like a Gibson curse of its own. Like, I mean, if it is, that'd be kind of interesting. It's like, oh, of course, the Earp family and the Gibson family would come together in a case like this because both families be cursed and everything. Because it's like, but the thing is, why did it come after Waverly and not Wynonna or Willa? Why her specifically is the question, So, but I guess because maybe being an Earp, well, no, because being an Earp doesn't make them immune to it. I mean, to be fair, she doesn't have Peacemaker at the time, so obviously Peacemaker does have a tendency to kind of shake her out of any spell or demonic thing that might kind of affect her, like the whole sleep spell from last season. But she doesn't have Peacemaker on her, so like it seems like this is kind of almost like a Hansel and Gretel type of situation where it's like, oh yeah, this demon's kind of like plumping you up, kind of getting you like under this spell, and it's just like, there's a demon coming to kill Waverly. Why? We still don't know. Notice that the only person not under the spell was Michelle. Maybe it's just because she's locked up somewhere. I would assume just because it's like maybe its powers can't reach her just because in the mind state she's in. Because the question is she like crazy actually? Is there something just naturally there mixed with the whole supernatural things of what she knows? Or is it more so like she's been haunted by this thing for years? Like, maybe the moment it gets close enough to Waverly, like it transferred over and it would stick around her. Why she picked now out of any time? Because it seems like it was near her. That hence the whole like you'll never get out, that whole deal. So it makes you go think like it had to have been with her the entire time. But the moment she met up with Waverly, like it left her. Like I said, maybe it has something to do with Gibsons. Maybe like the youngest of the Gibson children are always the target. Hence why it went after Waverly. So. Like I said, maybe we are going back to the whole curse thing. That's kind of my explanation for it, but we'll kind of have to wait and see on that. A lot of other things that's kind of coming up I thought was kind of interesting, since I talked about the Black Badge situation of like, oh yeah, they don't have the supplies and stuff like that. Like basically Nedley's dealing with the city council dude who's kind of like, oh yeah, like how are you spending the money and stuff like that, trying to figure out where the department stands with everything. Because it's like, oh yeah, what's all this other stuff, like, oh, Wynonna and stuff. It's like, oh, she's a deputy. It's like, oh, you work for the marshals, why didn't you say so? I'm gonna look into that. And it's like, oh boy, Nedley's like, now we have him sniffing around here and that. But it's like, why don't you just tell the town the truth? Because it's like, right, because the entire town doesn't know the truth. The only people who know the truth are the people that are basically working in the department right now. That includes Nedley and Hot, along with everyone working this whole Black Badge situation. Are the only ones that know the truth about the Ghost River Triangle. So at least tell the city council people more about it, because if you don't, they're going to never give you the money you need to do what we need to do to keep the city safe. But Nedley's kind of kept it quiet. I guess he's implying that he tried years ago, but it never worked. I guess it's not the easiest thing to kind of get people to believe like the whole supernatural is coming. But the supernatural is all happening there, but I guess you need to prove it to them. I don't know. But for him, it's like a secret he's kept secret for like 20 years and is just tired of it. And then Wynonna's kind of like, oh, I'm going to pass the torch to somebody else, and suggesting Nicole, which he already wanted to anyway. But I guess it's like now the timetable is getting pushed up a lot more, especially now that we know that Nedley kind of was the one who put Michelle in the situation she's in, because he ended up saying like, there's no way Michelle Gibson had like a drop of ill intent in her. That woman's just too good. Everyone looked at her. She's kind of like the shining pride, and so he reluctantly did it because his superior officer at the time, Ward, which is that whole situation keeps, because I don't remember that whole thing about him being a cop, like apparently him being Nedley's boss all these years ago. So it's like, once again, it's like, I don't remember them touching any of that in season 1. And it's like, oh yeah, like each season it's like a little bit more about him creeps out more and more. I'm like, it almost feels like that's coming out of nowhere, isn't it? Like, I don't remember them really explaining that much about his character. Maybe they did. Like, once again, I haven't seen season 1 since I rewatched it prior to season 2 coming out. So I don't know, maybe I'm just forgetting that. But it's like, oh yeah, him saying that his wife is crazy, which is interesting considering the fact is you're part of the Earp family, about demons and stuff like that. I mean, to be fair, we know how he handled the whole Earp situation. He was kind of a selfish prick about it. Like, he tried to cut corners in how to handle the situation because he didn't want that kind of curse following him in particular. Maybe you can make the argument it was for his children too, but I feel like it was more so your sake because you didn't want the burden to be on you. But still, it just, I don't know, like, I don't know why, because he wanted Nedley to like shut that down so quickly. Maybe it's just because, I mean, it always seemed like he didn't care about Waverly anyway. Maybe he was just using it as an excuse to get her out of the picture anyway. You know, I don't know. Maybe he still did feel some affinity towards Waverly no matter what, but even Waverly was kind of like, yeah, no wonder Daddy was always kind of a little cold towards me. It was because he knew I wasn't his and why I never really got a lot of attention, no matter how good and how smart I was, you know? So that's what I'm chalking that up to. But I'm very interested to dive into that more because it's all interesting because that's why Nedley pushes so hard. That's why he made sure to look at the Waverly, why he always tries to keep Wynonna on a straight and narrow. Probably also why he's the one that was always more inclined to like believe the whole supernatural thing, why he's always kept this secret too, is because he's known for a long time that things aren't quite right in the Ghost River Triangle. He just, I guess, you know, he only lets certain people in the know about what's going on. Because even like Jeremy's still kind of keeping that up himself because he was trying not to let Robin know, like, oh yeah, we deal with this on a regular basis. Because the last thing you need is a whole town freaking and flipping out about the whole like supernatural thing. Plus, then you'd have people going like, oh, like people be like might glock you up because they think you're crazy. So there's that whole snafu type of situation. So situation I thought was kind of interesting. Like on the recordings, he heard the voice, no one else did. So that makes me wonder, was there something a little more to that Bullshard thing? Was that just his imagination or was that really Bullshard? Like that's why I'm like, I don't know about that because it seemed like he noticed something. It's like, I mean, that's a question, like why were you able to notice that and no one else was? Because it seemed like Nicole really heard the voice, but he did. I guess it kind of, because it sounded like it wasn't like an actual voice. It sounded like it might have been something wrong with the recording is what it almost sounded like, but he recognized it as like a sound of a monster or as a demon or something. But Nicole didn't register in Nicole's mind, so I was like, okay, what's up with that? Also, there's that whole situation where Michelle it was pretty impressive that she ended up managing to escape like that. Shows you she isn't just like out of her mind. Like obviously she's got a lot of her faculties together, be able to kind of do what she did. Wynonna being forced to take her place, and then the warden with the security guard is like, the security guards are like, oh, we can just make it so it's like, oh yeah, she tried to kill her youngest child. Obviously, she killed her oldest. Or like, she's like, Wynonna's like, wait, what? And it's like the warden's kind of like, okay, let's just do that. It's like, what? That's your solution? You're going along with this idea? Okay, what? And turns out, dude is a Revenant. I guess he never really had any reason to go after Michelle because she's not an Earp, so it really wouldn't have mattered. I don't know. Maybe never had the real reason to ever present himself. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me. But it turns out, like, well, for one, Wynonna got the joy of informing him. It's like, if you kill me, it won't matter. I had a child, so she'll, this whole curse thing will repeat. But it's like, Wynonna ends up kicking his ass. In particular, ripping his head off. That was pretty impressive. I wasn't expecting it. And the warden just complying with what she said, like, I don't know. Well, it can't. No, it can't. Because I was like, is that supposed to be implying that he's a demon too? But it's like, no, he just accepted what she did. It's just like, oh, I'm got to stay away from these crazy Earps. So that's going to be another thing they need to cover up. But to be fair, I guess it's like, well, he's kind of corrupt himself. So, of course, he's not really going to say anything potentially. I don't know. He just kind of was rolling with the punches with that situation. She just dumped a head in your trash can. You were just kind of like, okay, I'm going to unlock you and you just get the hell out. I mean, I guess, self-preservation type of thing, but still. There's a little bit of something that's kind of brought up about Nicole. Obviously, didn't really go too much this episode, but it's kind of like Waverly had her issues about her mom, but Nicole had issues about talking about her family because she realized, like, oh yeah, it wasn't a fire that started because she remembers she woke up like when she kind of snapped to it or woke up, she was already like near the bank. So it's kind of like she remembers there was no smoke or fire. The smoking fire came from Black Badge covering up whatever happened there because she remembered hearing screams and stuff. So the fire was them covering up whatever evidence was there. And her parents wouldn't know anything because they only would know the cover up. But, Waverly's like, maybe they know more than they're letting on. I think it's just because Nicole obviously doesn't have a strong relationship with her parents. So it's just kind of a little awkward for her. So we'll see in the end what she does, like whether we're going to get like a full peek with them. I mean, obviously she's kind of under a spell right now, so that can't really happen, but still, I'm very interested to see what goes down. Jeremy and Michelle might be the only hope that they have because like everyone else is under spell, not unless Wynonna ends up touching Peacemaker at some point in time and kind of gets zapped out of the spell. I don't know. Like I said, quite a bit went down in this episode. I'm very interested to kind of see what the next episode has in store for us. Like, where this all takes is whether, any of my thoughts about some of this stuff is correct or completely off, so we'll just have to wait and see. And now moving on to this week's episode of Outcast, quite a few things we need to break down about this episode. First of all, it's the whole Patricia and Aaron situation. I didn't see that playing out the way that it. I kind of got the inkling. Like, first, I wasn't expecting him to actually reveal himself to her. I thought maybe like, oh, she comes back, the sandwich is going. She's like, oh, it's Aaron. But like, I wasn't expecting him to sit there and talk to her and everything. But I thought he was actually going to do it sooner when I was like, it's like, oh, I'm about to hug you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's about to stab her now. I thought that's where it was. Because for him, I guess killing her was more so like a means of cutting ties with everything in this world, because he's like trying to be full on back. Because even him being like, yeah, his dad being the way he is, like he used to hate his dad, but now he realizes, oh, my dad was preparing me to absorb all the evil, basically get to where I am right now. And I guess just for him, it's like his mom was the last thing holding him back. Maybe in his own weird, twisted way, he kind of resented his mom, but at the same time, he loved her because she was one of, if not the only person that loved him. And maybe in his own mind, he couldn't believe that his mom loved him. Like, because he always, it's just like he always, the entire, even season one, it just seemed like he always had a chip on his shoulder. He was just a natural born asshole. And it's just like, you don't know why. I guess his own issues, his own insecurities, his own problems, he just took it out on everyone, in particular his mom. Like, the way he killed his mom was vicious. Like, you see in her neck, there's a stab wound. He stabbed her up bad, dude. And then didn't call in the Rev ahead of time before he did it. Because I guess it's also to make up for the fact that he could cut up that body last episode like Sydney wanted him to. Was that last episode? I think it was. So I guess this was his way of being like, no, I can finally be set free. I'm on my path, I mean, for it was also mainly to get back at the Rev, and it's just like, it's so weird because all season one, you wanted to get your mom and the Rev broken up so that she would so it's almost like you wanted her love and attention only be on you and not someone else, which is weird. So once again, kind of goes back to what I was saying, like in his own weird, twisted way, he loves his mom, and maybe that's why he cut that weakness out, And I thought that's kind of interesting parallel, because it seemed like both of them are kind of dealing with that. They're kind of opposite sides of the spectrum, because the Rev is dealing with this because it's pissing him off, because he blames himself. It's like, if I'd actually killed that SOB in that fire, then I wouldn't have to worry about him having done what he did to Patricia. She'd still be alive right now. And he's so kind of dead set on revenge. And I thought it was such an interesting parallel, because like they are both like, it's like, oh, we're cutting out the weak side of us, and it's like, oh, because of my weakness, because he always thought he was helping people. All he was doing, I guess, in his mind too, is like, it kind of goes back to the whole like, oh, like exorcisms he did like back in the day, and it's like, oh, I thought I was helping, when in actuality I wasn't. Maybe I need to be this person to get the job done. And I thought it was such an interesting thing where Kyle was basically, the reason he's fighting this battle is to get back to his wife and get back to his daughter. Like, his family is why he fights. And the fact of the matter is, he doesn't know how this whole fight is going to end, but whatever it is, he doesn't want it to be something that essentially makes them look at him a different way. Essentially, you don't want to become to fight the monster, you don't want to become the monster yourself, is essentially what he's trying to stop the Rev from becoming. It's like, once you go down this route, there's no going back. And it's just like, you don't want to, like I said, you don't want to become that just to try and solve this situation. We will find a different way to handle things in this regard, But Aaron going as far as he did, trying to get the Anderson to light himself on fire. He's pointing a gun at him and everything. And I guess it would also piss him off, because I think what Rev said to him was very true, is because he's like, oh, you're acting like you're a devil and you're possessed. Like, oh, the demon is inside you. There ain't no demon inside of you. You're just a broken little boy. Like I said, he's just lashing out at everyone because of whatever's just broken and missing inside of him. Like, it's like, he could be like, oh, this is all your fault. You did this to me. It's like, I mean, to be fair, he wasn't trying to, but that's kind of like, Patricia and Aaron got caught up in his need for revenge, and it's like, if he went down this route, he'd just be kind of feeding the cycle even more, interestingly enough. And I mean, luckily it ended without the Rev burning, so that's good. Kyle, went chasing after him, but after Aaron, but got away with Sydney. I'm curious to see what Sydney's going to do now. Like, is he going to be more convinced of like, oh yeah, this kid's a part of our plan? Because that begs the question, is like, are you keeping Aaron around because of Sydney, or are you keeping Aaron around because he's essential to your plan? Do you think you could use someone like him? I mean, because once again, like, the whole Patricia thing initially, I thought like, oh, we're going to use that against him. I thought that was going to be like more of what he did in season 1, turning Patricia against Anderson. I thought he was going to make it more of a spectacle and try and destroy him even more. But to be fair, it's like his name's pretty much ruined in the town anyway after season 1. So I was kind of like, there ain't no like more damage you could necessarily do in a grand scheme of things. But I'm curious like what that's all about, because even the mayor, which it turns out the mayor's part of this too, because he was like, yeah, I knew what you had planned with the errand boy. Like, I knew you had him and you were keeping him as a pet this entire time. I didn't say anything, but now it's like, oh, he went off and killed one of my friends. So, because it also turns out Officer Nunez, she's one too. It's like, man, every time you turn around, you're finding out new people are involved in this. So it's like, that's why that transition from Sydney taking over, kind of like being welcome and stuff like that, that's why that went a lot smoother. That's why the mayor's kind of been really like all up in Giles about handling things, why he kind of it seems like he blocks him at some points. It's like, well, now that makes sense. The question then becomes like, and I'm still not 100% sure, some of the conversation he has with the mayor makes me think like, he is one, isn't he? Because it sounded like he was talking in third person at one point in time. So it's like, and what about Nunez? I'd assume she is one, because I'm assuming at this point in time, like, Sydney's not keeping any humans around. I mean, he killed Evelyn's husband last episode, so it's kind of like, yeah, like cutting all ties with all the humans. Like, maybe those who want to support, sure, but if anything else, it's like they're all in powerful positions to make sure this is running smooth. It's kind of interesting. Even the department isn't safe. I mean, it's implying that Nunez might be the only one, at least for now, but we don't know. That's the thing. There's so many around. There's only one Kyle, and it's not like you can literally check everyone in this town. That's too many people. And because it's not like everyone is acting suspicious. But then once again, maybe that is the case. Because Giles, Anderson, and Kyle made the deal like, none of us go off and do anything stupid, that basically we are in this together. Because we end up finding out quite a bit about Kyle's dad to a certain extent, because Kyle was kind of pissed at first because it's like, my dad left it's kind of what made him have the conversation he had with Anderson, because it's like he found out his dad was so caught up in this crusade 30 years ago, that's why he left him and his mom. But Kyle comes to realize, like, no, like, his dad was fighting this fight because he wanted Sarah and Kyle to leave, but obviously she didn't believe him at the time. It's like, why would you? It's probably not until she saw it for herself that she realized, oh my God, he was right. Like, you know, which is kind of interesting because it's almost in that borderline area where Megan's kind of in that similar situation. Well, I guess more so like it's kind of a repeat. No, it's very much so a repeat. I didn't even think about that because it's the same situation with Kyle and Allison and Amber is kind of that same dynamic in a sense, like the dad with the powers and the wife not really 100% believing him and the kid having abilities too. So it's kind of interesting that cycle is kind of repeating. Because it turns out Bob had his own reasons for getting involved. It's also interesting, too, because it seems like there is no necessarily head honcho in this, just people regulated to doing their position in all this. Because it turns out the body he was burying is a lady who was doing the same thing Sydney's currently doing 30 years ago. So whatever it was she was trying to do, the merger might not have happened exactly. Was that even the merger then? Is it like something they can only do every once in a while? Like all the stars have to align, like the planes between both realms, their realm and this world, like have to be thin. Like what's going on with that, you know? Why after all this time now, you know? Because they were still active even after that 30 years. Because let's not forget, like the one that possessed Kyle's mom, was that just residue left over, or were they still active even then? Like, did the fight end 30 years ago? I mean, that's just when the body was buried, but maybe Bob still kept up the fight a little bit. I don't know. For him, like the only thing he had left going was to make sure that body stayed hidden. That was the one beneath the house that Sydney was staying in. Once again, it's like, why there specifically? I guess because it's a house no one would have looked for. I guess maybe because it's also interesting because it was like right next to their house, you know. So I thought that was kind of because for Bob, he just wants to stay low and just avoid this fight because it's like too much is involved in this whole situation. He didn't want to get dragged into this because for him, once again, the anger and stuff, we didn't get specifics, but he lost everything all those years ago. So that's why he joined Kyle's dad's crusade. And so it also turns out he had his own little place where he dealt with all this. He had like a room. It kind of reminds me of Dexter's kill rooms where he puts down all the plastic everywhere. I'm sure plastic's not the right word. I don't know I forgot what you'd call that. But it seems like that'd be where he tortures demons. The one in particular that's dead is that one. So it's like, Was she someone that died because of the torture? I mean, to be fair, she could have been one of those people who it was too late to pull the demon out of her, so they ended up torturing her and killing her just for the purpose of like, well, plus she was also the head honcho kind of orchestrating everything, so maybe everything just kind of fell apart without her, so... I mean, part of me is wondering the fact is that they set that up showing that that's where Kyle's dad worked at. He had all these files on people. I'm guessing that might be where Kyle starts handling things. But to be fair, Kyle might want to not handle things the way his dad did. Because for him, it's like, no, like if I cross that line and do stuff I don't want to do, like I might not be able to kind of like, you know, asking my family to forgive me for that type of thing, you know? And I don't know, he might not have a choice when it comes to this whole situation. Then on the other side of things, you have the Megan situation, which is super complicated. It's like, you know, obviously more and more memories are popping up of that time. Holly's kind of being... It's that situation of Holly is upset with her mom. She's all running off telling strangers about the fact is my mom is a killer or whatever. She's like, what are you telling people? And she's like, telling the truth. And she's like, so Holly, do you want me to be, you know, do you want to be taken away from me, having to live with strangers? She's like, what happened was an accident. It was an accident. And you see a tear roll down her face. Because I think because she's so pissed at her mom, but she does realize that there are extenuating circumstances. It's just because she's very confused because she knows what she saw and what happened. And she blames her mom, but at the same time, she realizes her mom is a victim in this situation too, which she kind of talks about later on. And it's just kind of, it leaves her very conflicted. I mean, I think also what her mom said also kind of messes with her too, because it's like her mom's the last family she has left. And it's like, if she keeps saying and thinking like that, that means her mom will be taken from her and she'll have no one, you know, no matter what her mom's situation is, at the very least, she still have her mom, I guess is kind of like the thought process. And interestingly enough, Megan turns to the one person she probably doesn't want to turn to, and that's her parents. She stays with them for a while, which I think I completely misinterpreted that last season, that Megan's parents are actually her parents. It's like, because I think I was under the impression that they were all adopted, like they were part of this like adoption family, a sense, like both her and Kyle were adopted by her parents. But it's like, no, she's a biological child. Kyle was just one of many. Maybe they talked about that specifically. I don't remember them specifically saying that, like, oh yeah, her parents were like, but maybe they did. I didn't remember. It also seemed like she holds resentment towards her mom because it's like, yeah, you love the adopted kids more than your own child. Because I guess that's also kind of referencing, I mean, her mom goes like, we make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I'm wondering if that's referencing the Donnie situation specifically. I mean, I don't even know if her mom knows about that. Her mom might have like know about it, but probably tries to like shun and shy away from it potentially. Maybe that's why she has a little resentment towards her mom and everything, which is kind of sad. The same thing is kind of happening to her and Holly, but Holly makes it up too, because Holly's like praying. It's like, I'm gonna pray every night that the thing that was inside you doesn't come back. And you see it stresses Megan out because it's just kind of like, I think on some level she doesn't believe in all that stuff, you know, because I guess because her mom is super religious, Megan never really was, I assume, just by it. Because she's like, that's what you know, your grandma believes. That's kind of insinuating like, that's not what I believe about like, oh, they'll be safe as long as they keep praying every night. And I guess maybe that irritates her a little bit because it's like, yeah, her mom's like forcing that on her daughter. Maybe that's why the whole like lighthouse, not lighthouse, is it Beacon or Lighthouse? That little group, I forgot. I think it's the Beacon, right? Whatever the case may be, that we do see it pop up in her purse a little bit this episode. So you could definitely tell that's potentially where her story is going. What that will end up being, I don't know. Because that's still kind of something that's happening in the background. We don't know what that's all about. Like I said, we're still walking away with very few answers about a lot of things, like especially stuff going down 30 years ago. We still only know so much. Obviously, Kyle might go back and go to his dad's place and look at more of the files and kind of figure everything out. But I assume all those files are from like 30 years ago, so they're not, well, they might still be some use because maybe there were people that Kyle's dad never caught up with that are possessed. I mean, whatever happened to the people he freed? I mean, was he able to free anybody from back then, you know? Then you have Giles kind of being caught in the crosshairs of this whole situation too, especially because he's kind of sticking his neck out. So like I said, very few people are in this fight. Bob's kind of done what he's done, but he's still kind of in it somewhat, but it's mainly Giles, Anderson, and Kyle, and whole Anderson like cleaning up Patricia's place. It's kind of interesting. I don't know like if that's what they necessarily were aiming for, but at the end when like Anderson was holding Patricia's hand and she was dying, it almost seemed like she pushed his hand away because I guess she still blamed him on something. Because even at the very end, she's like, "That's still my sweet boy. I believe there's good in him," and she still blamed Anderson because of like it's like, "Oh, it's your fault that this happened." Which to a degree you can make the argument. Like obviously, Aaron had his own issues before, but Anderson's need for revenge is what set things in motion like that. But it seemed like she was pushing his hand away at the end, and it sounded like she said no. I guess it's because it's like, once again, she said she wasn't going to forgive him for what he did. And it's like, oh, you did that to my boy. Like, what he did to me, I don't care. I still love him. He's my baby boy. And the fact of the matter is, this is all on you. This is your fault, that type of thing. So I'm sure that it seemed like that's what I heard and saw, but I don't know. Maybe those are just kind of last minute things. And he never probably got the chance to really say what she wanted to say, or he really got to say what he wanted to say. I mean, he got to say he's sorry, but still. But he's cleaning up her place, so it's actually kind of interesting because the pentagram him true had, I chalked that up to being like an extra middle finger because that's the whole thing Sydney did to him last season. Like I said, I'm very interested to see where all of this takes us going forward into like the next episode. Also, really quickly, I want to comment on something the mayor said in this episode. He was like, yeah, like the fact is that you are all snatching up boys, and Sydney kind of scowls at him. So it does seem like even when you change, like those proclivities you have, like in his sense, the very fucked up proclivities that he has, still came over. So is that what I saw last episode? That because I interpreted it as like, oh, he came to the person that's like, I thought that was kind of like the boss or whatever, which maybe it was. It's kind of what I was interpreting it, but it's like maybe that was just some kid he did snatch up. So it does seem like he is still doing that. Once again, kind of going to the point of what I was bringing up earlier, like, is that what Aaron's supposed to be? Or is Aaron supposed to be kind of like his protege? Like, what is that turning into, Like, once again, like, how is this fight all going to play out? Will doing what Bob is doing, like that body being dealt with the way it was, is that the only means of fighting this? Or is there another way? Like I say, we will just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good